And now when I committed to moderating this, I told Anthony that I would be sure to keep us on time. And he has informed me that we are aiming for a 1 p.m. completion for this session so that everybody can enjoy a delicious lunch that's waiting for them. So I had some prepared questions, but I want to go to the audience first because I want to hear your questions rather than me driving the conversation. So are there any questions out there in the audience?
We'll take insults too. It's all right.
Well, if you don't have questions, then I might start with one. So I'm going to go ahead and get started then to kind of prime things up here. But I want to hear, so everybody on the panel made a comment that the holistic integration of our industry is really necessary for us to be able to move forward effectively. But I don't know that anyone had the chance to really go in depth about how we make that happen. And I'd like to understand how we make that happen. First, I want to start actually with the point though of data sharing. And I'm really curious to get the contractor's view on how we make data sharing easier among or I'm curious what's been happening inside firms to make that easier, how you protect your data when you're sharing it outside of the firms, and how we kind of pool it for the industry to make it more effective. And then I'm also curious from the design perspective how that's been happening as well. So integration through data sharing.
I think the concept of protecting your data is kind of overrated, to be honest. Because if you think about it for a second, the architect makes a drawing, passes that to the contractor, and then that drawing gets passed forward to the trades. And then someday it's just going to be hanging on somebody's shop box in the field. So data security is kind of a funny topic, right? There's a lot of vulnerability all the way through. What I've seen works best most of the time is when the owner of the project actually takes the lead in selecting a data sharing platform. And that serves them well on two fronts, right? One is that it's going to streamline the entire process downstream, but for every project participant, you're going to know, okay, I've got to learn to use AConnect, or I've got to learn to use ACC or Procore, or whatever it is. The value to the owner then is that at the end of the project, you have all the information. You own it all. And that can be very, very helpful in asset management, except in the case where you've got big commercial office buildings that are owned by banks or REITs who simply don't care. So I guess the point that I want to make, the caveat that I'll wrap around all of it, is that information integrity, digital twins, all that stuff really matters most, or only matters, on buildings where the owner is going to occupy and operate that facility. As long as those conditions are met, there's a lot of argument and a lot of impetus to make this work. If that's not the case, then get it up, get it done, get it open. That's it.
Thank you. And do you guys have any response to that?
Do you have a rebuttal? Radius Track is a pretty niche company, so we don't have a need to share much data. We're not really doing BIM. We're a manufacturing company. We're a specialty fabricator. But that doesn't mean that we can't make our data accessible. I think that the industry fundamentally has a people problem in conjunction with a data problem. There's a lot of competing interests, people wanting to get theirs, and that may be sort of a little high level and corny way to think about it, but I've been noticing that more and more, that, and we talked about it, right, that the contractor just wants the GCs and the architects out of the picture so that they can build, or the owners can build the building and start generating revenue. So I think we fundamentally have a people problem when it comes to dealing with data sharing or dealing with coming together and trying to solve and create a solution.
I think that the data is important, but your data is not necessarily important to the person that is receiving it, and knowing what that is the challenge. I've seen this push where everyone's trying to make this universal, like this is going to solve it all. And maybe that's possible, but what I'm more interested in right now today with what we have is the technologies that are out there that are flexible and allow you to access different formats of data and utilize those. I think that the translation gap exists unfortunately due to things just liability, contractual liability. Architects, engineers, we want to be, you know, in our silo over here, protected from any of the real construction money, any of that stuff that can go wrong. And so we hide from it and we don't share anything because we don't want to be tied to it. I don't know the solution to that. That's what we're trying to figure out right here at Intersys, but you know, maybe we'll be sued next year and be out of business.
I just want to throw in that I think all of us have and maybe a little bit cynical. There's a limit to how much we really want all this to work. Because the second it works and becomes simple, half of us are out of jobs. Right? So like, I only want it to be so simple that I can go home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, if I'm lucky, you know, not so simple that my job goes away. The fact that BIM VDC technology is difficult is really a blessing in disguise because it keeps us all employed.
I think that's interesting, and I think we could have a separate conversation about it. We have a question in the back. Do we have a mic back there? Okay.
Thank you. It's hourly, right? We charge based on hours. In light of the technology that's available now, we've heard of all sorts. Are we just selling time, or what should we be selling? What's the value? And this goes for everyone.
You know, that's something that I've been grappling with in engineering companies since about 2016, 2017, is that once technology decouples the deliverables from the hours that it took to get there, then we've got a real problem. Because like I said, fees are always going to be a race to the bottom. There's always going to be a market for the Moshe Softies and the Frank Gearys and the Genie Gangs of the world, right? But they're a minuscule minority of what this actual profession, what this industry is like. And I think it's a real challenge for how do architects, designers, construction managers truly present the value that they're bringing and separating it from that sort of hourly output. Because at the end of the day, you know, that's what they're asking us for. They say, give us a fee proposal, and then the client is going to review your general conditions. And in the general conditions from a construction manager, you know, here's my head count, here's how long they're in place for, here's my markup on them. And believe me that your competitor is looking to just, you know, if they can do it for half a penny an hour less and come up with a lower number and have the same viable product, you've lost the job. So it's a very, very difficult time. It's a very difficult time. And I think the imperative on builders especially is to find a way to recoup that money. And there's a lot of builders, they self-perform stuff because you can do the construction management for a fairly low price. You may even take a loss on it because you're going to make it back in the time, materials, the installation, and everything else that goes along with self-performing concrete, self-performing drywall, self-performing whatever it is you self-perform. That luxury is not going to be available for architects, and so I don't know what they're going to do.
I'd love to get Eric's view on this, because Intersys being at the space between, I feel like you're potentially fighting over the table scraps that are falling off.
I think it's just the way you look at it. Like, it's easy when you're an engineer to say, all right, hourly, what do I need to be profitable? And that's my number. I know my competitor is going to be right there, so that's the number I have to hit. No, don't do that. Don't devalue yourself, and go seek out value that you can add to the project. And the best way to do that is to find the related construction costs that you are able to influence and show your client that I can save you money in the long run if you pay me a little more to help you. And I'm going to give you a better result. That's a lot of marketing. And that's a lot of making promises. But if you stake your reputation on that, your client might trust you a little bit more. I think an example for that being done successfully is we might put a fee proposal together as a structural engineer for $500,000. And then we get a peek at the concrete design build contract and their engineer is getting paid $500,000. We're designing the whole building and they're just helping that guy optimize his piece of the pie. He gets paid more because he's tied to the construction value that he's representing, and people are happy to pay him more because they see the savings on the cost directly. So we have to look for opportunities to tie ourselves to that.
I think that's an incredible point. Ron, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I thought it was a really good question. I used to work in architecture, and I found that integrating automation wasn't too difficult, but the problem was actually making it stick. And a part of that was because it was kind of focused on these micro problems. And so when I went to Radius Track, it was actually a lot easier. And I found that I could embed it into the entire infrastructure. And the reason for that is Radius Track used to be this kind of service-oriented business. And then we realized we ship curved metal. We have a product, and we can build the business around the product. And I find that architecture in the same way can start to identify within each business, what is your product? How do you define that as a kit of parts? How can you generate your recipe? And it doesn't have to be that the building is the same every time, but rather how do you codify what you do and start to distribute that as a product, maybe, which is hard. But I think that architects are mostly providing a service with the hours.
Thank you. Was there a question in the back? I think so. Just really quick expectation setting here. This is going to be our last question, then we're going to let everybody go for lunch.
Not a question. I was just like saying what I agree with what Eric is saying, that like it's Phil said that the drawings you give, you say that like the model you give, you say don't trust it, look at it. It's not really true. I mean, I can give you examples of my own projects where our model was way more accurate than those drawings. It took us more time to go back and put in drawings, more labor to put in those drawings just to document it, because that's how the contract was written. And the contract was written in a way that, because that it goes back to your question of risk. We didn't want to take the risk because we were not getting a share of that pie. If anything, I mean, so essentially we shot ourselves in the foot, because even though the digital model was way more accurate, we still tell them to look at it, because like as Eric is saying, we didn't get any share of the pie. It's like till someone over there, the ownership agrees to like to give the architect a little more of that pie of doing that additional of giving the data to you. The data is way accurate that we have, but to give it to you in a way that we all can use it, we don't get anything extra for that.
All right. So thank you for that comment. I will just ask really quickly, any last questions? Yes.
Ron showed a slide where, I don't know, there's probably 20 pieces of software up there. No chance. Like, I'm sorry, but there's a lot of people out here trying to do it. No chance in the next 10 years, 15, 20 years, there's going to be one piece of software, and he's doing one piece of the building. So to me, it's a pipe dream. We're better served looking for tools that allow us to be flexible and communicate between things. And there's a lot of tools out there that are doing that. We're still a long way in that regard, but I don't see really a future where it's just I watch a movie and the guy's freaking moving things around in augmented reality and he's solving his life's problems. Like I don't know when we're getting there, but it's not anytime soon.
I'll be quick. I agree. And I think that the best way we can get a little bit closer is as a company, you focus on trying to understand your infrastructure and that as a whole and build the tools that make sense to run the business as opposed to just this continual progress of script over script.
If I took my car to a mechanic and all he had was a pair of pliers, I'd panic. Like, I wouldn't want that guy working on my car. You go to the mechanic and you see they've all got a collection of tools and you need to have the right tool for the job. So those things don't worry me. I think what worries me is when I go to firms or when I work with companies and they have 6 pairs of pliers to do the same job. And so finding the balance to streamline that from a sort of business operational perspective, I think is important. I see Autodesk making some progress in a lot of areas. I know they're going to talk about their Forma platform in next month. I'm sure they're going to give us some more information about that, more marketing mumbo jumbo, however you want to characterize it. But they're trying, they're getting there. And I think from a business owner's perspective, you want to write as few checks as possible to make your tech stack work. You want to write you want them to be big and bulky and just as few vendors as you can. But that doesn't mean you're ever going to be able to write one check. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for your thoughts today. I think you gave everyone a lot to chew on, and I think you're actually going to get to physically chew on something just now. So if I could get a round of applause for our panelists today.